Some places do not disappear in a single moment. There is no explosion that everyone remembers, no one dramatic night when a city is instantly erased. Instead, these places fade slowly, and that slow disappearance is what makes them unsettling. While the streets still look familiar and the days still feel normal, the future is already breaking underneath them. What's strange is that, in the beginning, nothing feels urgent. People keep going to work. Children keep going to school. Shops open and close like they always have. And because life continues, it becomes easy to believe that everything is fine. A small problem looks manageable. A warning sounds like an inconvenience. A delay feels harmless. And the most dangerous decisions are often the ones that seem practical in the moment. That is the pattern behind this video. These are not stories about chaos. They are stories about normal days. About ordinary people living in ordinary places, convinced they still have time. Time to fix it later. Time to wait for a better plan. Time to avoid overreacting. And then, one day, they realize something quiet but final. The moment to act has already passed. This video explores 5 forgotten places with dark histories. Each place has its own story, but they all share the same uncomfortable lesson. A town doesn't have to be destroyed to be lost. Sometimes it only takes a single decision that makes things slightly worse, followed by weeks and months of hesitation that turns slightly worse into permanent. As you listen, you'll start noticing how these stories move. They rarely begin with tragedy. They begin with something small, something that doesn't feel like a threat. And that is exactly why it works. You don't need to watch closely to follow along. These stories are told calmly and slowly, and many people listen to this kind of video in the background. But even as background, the details matter because each story is built around the same question. Where was the moment things could have gone differently? The first place we'll talk about is a small town in Pennsylvania, a place that didn't seem important and didn't feel dangerous. Its name was Centralia. Centralia was a small, ordinary town in the state of Pennsylvania, one of many quiet communities that existed without attracting attention from the outside world. It was not a place people traveled to, and it was not a place that appeared in history books. It was simply a town where families lived normal lives, worked regular jobs, raised children, and expected that the future would look much like the past. For generations, people had lived in Centralia without ever thinking that the ground beneath their homes could become a problem. The town had streets lined with houses, local schools where children spent their days, churches that served as social centers, and small businesses that supported daily life. Nothing about the town suggested danger, and nothing about its location made residents believe that something could quietly go wrong. In the early 1960s, Centralia faced what seemed like a minor issue. On the edge of town, there was a landfill where trash had been accumulating for years. The smell bothered nearby residents, and local officials began looking for a way to clean it up. They were not dealing with an emergency, and there was no pressure to act dramatically. What they wanted was a simple, inexpensive solution that would make the problem disappear. The decision they made felt practical at the time. The trash would be burned, as landfills often were in that era. It was a routine action, not something that required long discussions or outside experts. There were no serious warnings, no heated debates, and no reason to believe that burning the landfill could create a long-term threat. From the perspective of the people making the decision, it was an ordinary solution to an ordinary problem. What they did not know was what lay beneath the landfill itself. Under Centralia ran a coal seam, part of the region's long history of coal mining. When the fire reached the coal underground, it did not behave like a normal surface fire. Instead of burning out, it found a continuous fuel source. The fire moved into the mine tunnels and began spreading beneath the town, slowly and invisibly. At first, nothing appeared to change. There was no sudden disaster, no visible destruction, and no reason for panic. Life in Centralia continued as usual. People still went to work in the morning, children still attended school, and homes remained occupied. From above ground, the town looked exactly the same as it always had. But beneath the surface, the fire was moving. As time passed, small and confusing signs began to appear. Some residents noticed strange smells coming from the ground. Others felt unusual warmth beneath their feet, even during colder months. Cracks began forming in the roads, and in some basements, unfamiliar gases started to accumulate. These changes were unsettling, but they did not immediately feel catastrophic. For many people, the situation was uncomfortable rather than alarming. The town was still standing, and daily life had not been disrupted in a dramatic way. Because nothing terrible had happened yet, it was easy to believe that nothing terrible would happen at all. Local officials discussed possible solutions. Some suggested digging trenches to contain the fire, while others proposed sealing off certain underground areas. Each idea came with high costs and no guarantees of success. There was no clear answer and no solution that felt both effective and affordable. As a result, decisions were delayed, and the fire continued to spread underground. Years passed, and the problem slowly grew worse. By the late 1970s and early 1980s, it became clear that the situation could no longer be ignored. Studies showed that the underground fire was expanding and that it could continue burning for decades, possibly even centuries. The ground beneath Centralia was becoming increasingly unstable, and the town could not be considered safe in the long term. At that point, Centralia was not facing a disaster that would happen tomorrow or even next year. Instead, it was facing a future where normal life was no longer possible. The town could not be stabilized, and there was no realistic way to stop the fire completely. The government eventually stepped in and began buying homes, offering residents the chance to relocate. For some families, the decision to leave was immediate. For others, it was painful and difficult. Centralia was not just a place to live. It was home, tied to memories, relationships, and generations of family history. Still, people began to leave. One house at a time, streets grew quieter. Schools closed as enrollment dropped. Businesses shut their doors, and churches held final services. Centralia did not collapse suddenly, and it was not destroyed in a single event. Instead, it slowly emptied as residents accepted that staying was no longer possible. Today, almost nothing remains of Centralia. A few roads still cut through empty land, leading past foundations where houses once stood. In some places, cracks in the asphalt release warm air, and faint smoke can still be seen rising from the ground. Beneath the surface, the fire continues to burn, more than 60 years after it first began. Centralia did not disappear because of a dramatic catastrophe. It disappeared because of a decision that seemed harmless at the time, followed by delays that allowed a small problem to grow into something permanent. The next story takes us far from Pennsylvania, across the ocean, to a place that once held thousands of people, on a piece of land barely large enough to hold them. This place was not slowly poisoned. It was simply left behind. Hashima Island lies off the coast of Japan, a small concrete mass rising from the sea. From a distance, it looks unnatural, almost like a ship that was never meant to move. For most of its history, Hashima was not known for silence or abandonment. It was known for density, noise, and constant activity. At its peak, Hashima was one of the most densely populated places on Earth. Thousands of people lived on an island so small that space had to be stacked vertically. Concrete apartment buildings rose tightly together, creating narrow corridors where sunlight barely reached the ground. Life there was structured, efficient, and demanding. The island existed for one reason: coal. Beneath Hashima were rich coal deposits, and for decades the island played a critical role in Japan's industrial growth. Families lived where they worked, and nearly every aspect of daily life revolved around the mine. Children went to school on the island, adults worked long shifts underground, and entire generations grew up knowing no other home. Despite the harsh conditions, Hashima functioned like a complete city. There were schools, shops, bathhouses, and small communal spaces where residents gathered after long days of work. Life was not easy, but it was predictable, and predictability created stability. For years, there was no reason to believe this would change. Then the world's energy needs shifted. Coal slowly lost its importance as oil became the dominant fuel. What had once made Hashima essential began to make it obsolete. Mining operations became less profitable, and maintaining an isolated island city no longer made economic sense. When the decision was made to close the mine in 1974, it happened quickly. There was no long decline, no gradual emptying. The island's purpose vanished almost overnight. Families packed their belongings and left. Entire apartment blocks were abandoned in a matter of weeks. Furniture remained in place. Personal items were left behind. Classrooms closed mid-year. The routines that had defined life on Hashima for decades simply stopped. Within months, the island was empty. Without people, the sea took over. Salt air corroded concrete. Windows shattered under constant wind. Hallways collapsed as buildings aged without maintenance. The tightly packed city that once felt overcrowded became hollow and unsafe. What makes Hashima unsettling is not the speed at which it was abandoned, but how completely it was erased from daily life. There was no disaster to remember, no tragedy that demanded attention. The island did not fail. It was simply no longer needed. For years, Hashima sat silent, visible from the mainland but unreachable. A reminder of how quickly a place can disappear once its function is gone. When usefulness ends, history often follows shortly after. Today, Hashima Island stands as a concrete shell in the ocean. Its buildings remain, but the lives that once filled them are long gone. It is a place frozen at the moment when the future quietly decided it would move on without it. Not all places are abandoned slowly. Some remain perfectly normal right up until the moment they are left behind. This story begins in a city that was never meant to be forgotten. Pripyat was built in the 1970s as a model city in northern Ukraine. It was young, modern, and carefully planned, designed to represent progress, technology, and a future shaped by science. Wide streets, green parks, apartment blocks filled with families, and cultural centers gave the city an atmosphere of optimism rather than caution. The people who lived in Pripyat were not random residents. Many were engineers, technicians, and specialists working at the nearby nuclear power plant. It was considered a good place to live, especially for young families. The city felt clean, organized, and secure. There was no reason to believe that life there could end suddenly. On April 26, 1986, that assumption quietly collapsed. An accident occurred at reactor number 4 of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, just a few kilometers from the city. In the early hours after the explosion, Pripyat appeared unchanged. People woke up, went outside, and continued their routines. Children played in courtyards. Couples walked through the streets. There were no immediate signs that the city had become one of the most dangerous places in the world. Radiation is invisible, and because it cannot be seen or smelled, it does not create panic on its own. For hours, and then for an entire day, life in Pripyat continued almost normally. Residents were not told the full truth. There were no clear warnings, no urgent evacuation orders, and no explanation of what had happened beyond vague reassurances that the situation was under control. By the time authorities decided to evacuate the city, radiation had already spread through the air, the streets, and the buildings. When the announcement finally came, residents were told to pack only essential items. They were assured that the evacuation would be temporary and that they would return within a few days. Most people believed this. They left food on tables, personal belongings in closets, children's toys on the floor. Buses arrived, and within hours, nearly 50,000 people were gone. They never came back. Pripyat was abandoned in a single afternoon, not because the city was destroyed, but because it had become uninhabitable. Unlike places that slowly fade, Pripyat was frozen in time at the exact moment normal life stopped. Apartments remained furnished. Schools were left as they were. The city did not decay immediately because it had no chance to change. Over the years, nature moved in. Trees grew through sidewalks. Plants filled empty rooms. Buildings weakened as maintenance stopped. What had once been a symbol of technological confidence became a quiet reminder of how fragile that confidence can be. What makes Pripyat unsettling is not only the scale of the disaster, but the calm that preceded it. There was no dramatic countdown, no visible warning. Only normal life continuing until it suddenly wasn't possible anymore. Pripyat did not disappear because people chose to leave. They left because staying was no longer an option. Today, the city remains largely untouched, preserved as a record of that moment. A place where the clock stopped, not because time ended, but because life had to. Not every place is lost because it becomes dangerous. Some places disappear simply because the world moves on without them. This story begins in the desert. Kolmanskop was once a town built on sudden wealth. It stood on the edge of the Namib Desert, in what is now Namibia, a place where the landscape itself seemed hostile to permanent life. And yet, for a brief period of time, Kolmanskop was one of the most prosperous settlements in the region. The reason was diamonds. In the early 20th century, diamonds were discovered in the area, and almost overnight, the desert became valuable. German settlers arrived and built a town that felt completely out of place in its surroundings. Houses were constructed in a European style, with solid walls, large windows, and imported furniture. There were hospitals, schools, a theater, and even a bowling alley. Life in Kolmanskop was structured and comfortable, especially when compared to the harsh environment beyond the town's borders. Residents enjoyed electricity, running water, and cultural events that mirrored life in Europe. Inside the town, it was easy to forget that just beyond the buildings stretched miles of empty desert. For years, diamonds were so abundant that stories spread of stones being picked up directly from the sand. The town thrived, supported entirely by the belief that this wealth would last. Few people questioned what would happen when the diamonds became harder to find. Eventually, they did. As mining became more difficult and new diamond fields were discovered elsewhere, Kolmanskop began to lose its importance. Extracting diamonds from the area was no longer efficient, and maintaining a town in such a remote and unforgiving environment stopped making economic sense. People began to leave. At first, the departure was gradual. Some families relocated for better opportunities, while others stayed behind, hoping the decline would reverse. But over time, it became clear that Kolmanskop had no future. Without diamonds, there was no reason for the town to exist. By the 1950s, Kolmanskop was almost completely abandoned. Without maintenance, the desert reclaimed the town with remarkable speed. Sand drifted through broken windows and piled up in empty rooms. Entire houses filled with dunes, as if the desert were slowly erasing every trace of human presence. Floors disappeared beneath layers of sand, and doorways became frames for the shifting landscape. What makes Kolmanskop unsettling is not that it was destroyed, but that it was absorbed. There was no single moment of collapse, no final event that marked its end. The town simply became unnecessary, and once people left, nature took over without resistance. Today, Kolmanskop stands as a quiet ruin, preserved not by intention, but by isolation. Visitors walk through buildings where sand covers staircases and hallways, reminders of how temporary prosperity can be when it is tied to a single resource. Kolmanskop did not fall because of violence or disaster. It disappeared because its value disappeared first, and once that happened, nothing remained to hold it in place. Some places are not abandoned by time, or by economics, or by slow decline. Some places are left behind because a single moment makes it impossible for life to continue. This story ends in a small village in France. Oradour-sur-Glane was a quiet village in central France, the kind of place that rarely appeared in headlines or history books. Life there moved slowly and predictably. Families lived in modest homes, children attended local schools, and daily routines revolved around work, meals, and community gatherings. On June 10, 1944, that normal life ended in a single afternoon. German soldiers entered the village under the pretense of a routine inspection. Residents were ordered to gather in the town center. There was confusion, but not panic. Oradour had no history of resistance, and there was no immediate reason for people to believe they were in danger. Men were separated from women and children. The men were taken to barns and storage buildings. The women and children were led into the village church. What followed happened quickly. The men were shot. The buildings were set on fire. In the church, an explosion filled the space with smoke and flames. Those who survived the initial blast were trapped inside as the building burned. By the end of the day, nearly the entire population of the village was dead. Oradour-sur-Glane was destroyed completely. After the war, a decision was made that set this place apart from all the others in this video. The village was not rebuilt on its original site. Instead, a new village was constructed nearby, and the ruins of Oradour were left exactly as they were. Cars remain rusted in the streets. Homes stand open and empty. Personal items lie where they were left. The village was preserved not as a ruin reclaimed by nature, but as a permanent memorial. Unlike the other places we've explored, Oradour was not lost because of slow decisions or quiet neglect. It was erased in a single, deliberate act. But what connects it to the others is what came afterward. Life did not return. The choice to leave Oradour untouched turned it into a place frozen in time, a reminder that some endings are so final that rebuilding would feel like forgetting. Walking through the village today feels less like visiting ruins and more like interrupting a moment that never properly ended. Oradour-sur-Glane stands as a contrast to the other stories in this video. It was not abandoned slowly. It was not emptied over years. It did not fade. It stopped. The places we talked about in this video disappeared in very different ways. Some were slowly emptied. Some were abandoned almost overnight. And some were left behind after a single moment that made normal life impossible. But despite their differences, they all share something important. None of them were lost because people expected it to happen. In every case, there was a moment when life still felt normal. A moment when the situation seemed manageable, temporary, or distant. A moment when waiting felt safer than acting. And it was often that moment, quiet and unremarkable, that mattered the most. Disasters do not always arrive loudly. They do not always announce themselves with chaos or urgency. Sometimes they begin with small decisions, delayed responses, or the belief that there will always be more time later. By the time the danger becomes visible, the future has already shifted. These places remind us that history is not only shaped by dramatic events. It is shaped by ordinary days, ordinary choices, and the things people decide not to do. If you enjoy this kind of slow, reflective storytelling, there will be more videos like this on the channel. Each one explores places and stories that are easy to overlook, but difficult to forget once you understand what happened. You're welcome to subscribe if you'd like to continue listening to these stories, and to join future videos that explore forgotten places, quiet disasters, and the moments that changed everything without anyone noticing at the time. New stories are coming soon. Until then, thank you for listening.